Okay, so we've hit record. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's training session. It's going to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour because we're limited to 40 minutes from Zoom. And so I'm going to dive straight into sharing my screen. Oh, multiple. Oh no, that's sharing everybody's screen. We don't want to do that, do we? And here we are launching into CPD planning. Okay, so CPD planning, hopefully everybody can see the screen. Oh, we've got people waiting to come in. Let's admit
Hayley,
all
as
of
well,
those.
can I just suggest to everybody, if you have questions while we're going along, drop them into the chat or the question box or something like that, because if we don't get time tonight, we can follow them up afterwards or post them up in the group or something, because it's going to be a bit of a rush, isn't it?
It is. Thank you, Tom. That was my job to say that, and I totally forgot. So please do use the chat function, and we can get back to any questions that you may have following the presentation. So here we are with CPD planning, deciding where you want to be before people tell you where to go. So who am I and what do I know about CPD? So I've been running my small independent workshop since 2006 because I was no longer suitable for the RAF. CPD in the RAF is really important. I'm an MOT tester, so here we are again with some more CPD compliance. I completed a Master's in Science, so of which CPD does play an important part of. I'm a writer in the industry, and I hold a fellowship with the IMI with an engineering accreditation. So to maintain that status with the IMI, it's another area where we need to take CPD very seriously. So what is CPD? I hope everybody loves my graphics. Continuous professional development. So determining your own path rather than allowing others to decide it for you. So what we need to do is to get a sort of journey together for our CPD in order to make it effective and fit it into our busy lives. So first of all, you need to understand where you are, then work out where you want to be, consider what skills you already have, what you need, and then decide on the strategy on how to get there and develop a timeline to make sure you get there when you want to get there. So where you are right now and where you want to be, that bit can be filled in first. So what I've done here, and oh, we're missing out on our graphics if your video pane is in the way of my little buzzy bee there, is I've put together a sort of example to contextualize how we would apply CPD with a framework. So if we have our tyre fitter who's got no sector qualifications, let's say our tyre fitter is experienced, that they are 2 years in, and they've progressed on to fast fit. They've developed a mechanical understanding and they're keen to progress. So where they want to be is they want to be an MOT tester because, hey, who would not want to be an MOT tester? It's a fantastic job. So would this mean that they would be qualified? Would they get a pay increase? Is there more scope for employment with this wider skill set? And is there greater opportunity for further training? This also gives us a chance to develop management skills. Not every MOT lane is one person testing. So this means that you might start being in charge of people and you can now showcase opportunity for further progression within an organization. So we're going to have a bit of an activity now, and I'd like some answers in the chat box. How would we find out what skills that our tyre fitter has right now? And what does our tyre fitter need in order to become a tester? So it's a little bit mean because, you know, I'm going to see who's been paying attention. So I'm going to stop the sharing for a minute and see if we've got anything coming through on the chat box. Oh, nothing. Oh, no. So anybody know how we would assess the skills of our tyre fitter? How we would start? There we go. Check staff training history. Thank you, John Hall, not leaving me hanging there. I was a little bit nervous then. And observe them. Yeah, that's right. So that's another area that we can observe where we are. So what we're sort of describing here is an appraisal structure. So not everybody has the chance or the opportunity to work for an organization. Ask them, absolutely. Not everybody has the opportunity to work for an organization that might have a formal appraisal structure in place. So this is something that you can do for yourself if you wanted to. So evaluating where you are and where you want to be is something that we can do for ourselves if that is lacking in our organisation. So what does our tyre fitter need in order to become a tester? So if you're a tyre fitter with no qualifications, check with the DVSA website online manual for set entry qualifications. Textbook answer from John Hall, MVQ level 3. Perry, you are absolutely right. That is a requirement now, MVQ level 3 or equivalent qualification. Speak to your authorised examiner. Again, another textbook answer. Certain number of years experience. Charmaine, you are absolutely right. Level 3 from New Garage Limited. Again, spot on. So we all know where we are and where we get that information. If we're unsure, it is something that we can Google. I'm all for a bit of Googling. And there are for MOT testing specifically, because we no longer go to what was VOSA to get that training, we now go to private organisations. If you Google pretty quickly, people are there to sell you their services, which is very handy indeed. So going back to sharing the screen. So what is meant by the strategy? So what specifically do you intend to learn, and how do you intend to learn, and when do you intend to learn it? So you need to develop a timeline. So do you want to learn giving a set amount of time each week, and then the outcome of when you are qualified, that will be determined once you've completed all of that time? Or if you want to learn by a given date, that will determine how much you then need to spend each week in that training. So you need to review your progress at regular intervals to make sure you be on track. I know, I should be in comedy. And you need to log all of this training. You need to keep records of your training. This is easy to do with IMI membership, and they do have a free facility. And you'll need that membership if you want to purchase any of their online training that they sell. I hear it's very good, Tom. Or you can record your own training with a simple spreadsheet, which is where I started. I found it was a lot easier because when I started my CPD journey, it was quite simple. So a spreadsheet was fine for me. My husband is a huge fan of a notebook and a pen, and he writes things down. He finds it helps organize his thoughts. It doesn't really matter which media that you use to write the training down. All that it matters is that you do keep a log. And then when you go into a formalized, legislatively obligated situation for CPD, something like MOT testing or maintaining your IMI accreditation, then it will become even more important. And to have that best practice in place is a great place to be, because it will just translate straight over to that. So I've also put together some free training resources that I've had a quick Google, which I did it about 40 minutes ago, because I thought it might add a little bit of extra content. So
Hayley, can I just interrupt very quickly?
Yeah.
That something about the log that's often forgotten, I think, is that if you keep a log in a sensible format, whether you use the IMI system, a notebook or a spreadsheet, doesn't really matter. You're actually developing something that if you need it to go for a job, it's something that you could show as proof of what you've been doing. And as an employer, if somebody came to me with a list of things that they'd done like that, I'd kind of rate that quite highly. And I think it's just sometimes we forget to say, isn't it? That's all. Sorry.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is an important document that, we've got people waiting in the waiting room. I've just let them in. So this is, thank you and for joining us, our people who have just arrived. We're just getting to the end of the CPD training, but this slideshow will be available afterwards. And you've not missed the headline act, which is Tom with his EV training. So our free training resources that we have here are Auto Resource, which is a fairly new platform. It's a central hub of all different brands, and they have consolidated all of their available training that is supported with that into one location, which I found really handy. There's an online open resource. So what I mean by an open resource is that it's free to access. You don't need to send them any money, and that's from Rep Expert. Also, excellent bonus shop. I've got a body warmer arriving next week. Been spending my points. There's also an online open resource from Banner Batteries, which I find has been really useful, particularly with training apprentices. And there are also live digital training events from Schaeffler. This is when they have actual people talking down the Zoom, so you can ask them questions as well about anything in particular that you've come across in your workshop. And then at the bottom here, we've got the IMI, where you can, if you've not already created a login, you can create a free account, and as Tom said, start populating that and use that if you ever wanted to progress into a different organization. And sometimes you don't have to share, you can download and print it off if you wanted to, but you don't have to share it, but it can organize your thoughts and help structure a CV, which I think is really handy. So these are quite link heavy. These will be available after the training. So if you did want to click through them, because I'm aware that if you're putting a cursor over these, the functionality will be lost. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I hope that's been helpful, and we're going to leave any questions towards the end if that's all right for everybody. And I'm going to be handing over to Tom, who's going to take us through some EV training. So Tom, I am just making you a host. Make host. You have control.
Right. Hello again, everybody. I'll just need to share my screen now. So bear with me just a second, and then we'll go through a few simple slides. Here we go. That's it. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. Yeah, my name's Tom, and I think I know just about everybody. I've met you online, if not physically. It's nice to meet you in this way as well. I'm going to give you a very quick overview of a PHEV, a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and in the process of doing that, just to give a quick overview about battery kilowatt hours and range and things like that. So in the 10 minutes that I've got, you know, we're not going to be going in massive detail, but please do drop questions into the chat or whatever else as we're going along if you like. Okay, so first of all, the car I'm going to be looking at is my own car, which is a Golf GTE plug-in hybrid, and it's just parked out on my drive. It took me ages to find an angle this afternoon when I took the photographs that didn't show how dirty it was. So I think I've come across okay on that one. And you can see it's actually plugged in at the moment and charging. And I'm a super duper nerd because all the way through I have the proper charging point on the front of my house, and it even charges from the solar panels on top of the house. Possibly not at this time of year quite so much, but for about 3/4 of the year anyway, I can completely fill up the car from sunshine, which is something we kind of like to do. And it's rather interesting, really. The one good thing about the lockdown since February or March or whenever it was, I think I've used about 1 tank full of petrol and done everything else driving around on sunshine. So it's been quite a useful exercise from that point of view. Anyway, quick overview of the car. Underneath there somewhere, you can just about see it, but that's underneath where the battery lives. On this particular car, it's about a 7.5 kilowatt hour battery. I'll come back to what that means in a minute or two, but it sort of lives approximately under the back seat, but underneath the vehicle. These things are always stored externally. Same reason you'd store a petrol tank externally, you know, and that's all. Okay, so this is the under bonnet shot. This is the very epitome of a word that I only learned a little while ago, and you might quite like it. It's called space crunch. And it's a thing that the manufacturers suffer with a lot. And we do, we bash our knuckles, don't we, because of space crunch. In other words, every little bit of this car under the bonnet is full. You know, there doesn't seem to be any spare space at all. Anyway, the engine itself on this car, it's only a 1.4 litre engine, but it's a turbocharged engine. And this is very much a trend at the moment, isn't it, with what's called downsizing. So the engines have been downsized, but then effectively powered back up by the turbo and things like that. And then particularly with the addition of hybrid drive on the side of it. But interesting car, there is a button inside the car which has got GTE written on it that you can press. And what that button does is it says, I don't care about economy anymore. I don't care about you saving the battery. I don't really care about anything except going quite fast. And it effectively runs the ICE, internal combustion engine, in parallel with the electric drive. And 0 to 60 time is only 0.5 of a second slower than the 2.8 GTI. So it's kind of a, you know, a good advert for what electricity is able to do in some of these cars. Anyway, so that's the engine. Over to this side now, the component you're looking at there is the battery charger. this big orange wire here effectively runs round behind the radiator and connects to the charging plug that I was looking at before. The reason for an onboard charger, as this is called, of course, is because the battery on this system is something in the order of about 400 volts, about 380, 390 volts, something like that. So obviously, if we're plugging it into, 230 volts mains, then that electricity has to be stepped up, converted up to an appropriate level to charge the battery. This particular car doesn't fast charge, but then it doesn't really matter, does it? Because it's got an ordinary engine that goes along with it anyway. Anyway, I need to keep hustling along, conscious that we don't have a huge amount of time. This is the main kind of unit, and you can see the plus and minus at the top middle there. Those two big orange wires are the ones that connect directly to the battery all the way at the back of the vehicle. And that's effectively, let's just call it a 400 volt DC supply to this unit here, which is called a variety of things. It's an inverter because it inverts the DC voltage into the three wires that come out of the front here. Oops, sorry, go back, I clicked accidentally. These three wires at the front, which connect to the motor. The motor is integrated into the direct shift gearbox, but it's a three-phase motor. So the motor runs on AC effectively. Now, of course, when the motor is running in reverse under regenerative braking, it generates electricity in three phases, and that three-phase electricity is rectified inside this unit and at a suitable voltage then fed back to recharge the battery. And that, of course, is the fundamental absolute benefit of an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle, in that instead of throwing away energy when you put your foot on the brakes, which is what we normally do, pads, press on discs, etc., and make heat, and we just throw that heat away into the atmosphere. On an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle, the energy that we would normally waste is converted into electricity and effectively put back in the battery. And that's, one of the key things about the improvement in efficiency for these vehicles. So the three big wires at the bottom are the ones that connect to the motor. The two big wires at the top connect along to the main battery. And the connection in the center is the one that goes to the charger that I looked at before, but also to this component, which you can hardly see. You can just about make out an orange wire down there, but it's a three-phase high voltage air conditioning pump down at the bottom of the engine. And the kind of fun thing here is that this is still bolted on the engine in the same place that it would be if it was driven by an ordinary poly V belt, but it's actually driven electrically, which is good, of course, because it means you can run the aircon without the engine running. And you can also precondition the vehicle because you can run it while it's plugged in and sort of cool the vehicle down or warm the vehicle up. So high voltage, three-phase motor that drives the aircon pump. Down the back of the engine, we can just about make out here, this is the silver bit, is like the bulkhead, if you like. And again, you can just about see one orange wire there. That goes down to a PTC heater, positive temperature coefficient heater. If you like, a kind of electric fire. So we pass electricity through some elements and they heat up and create heat. And that's where we get the cabin heat from. PTC, you might remember, positive temperature coefficient. And what that means is that as the elements get hotter, their resistance increases and thereby reduces the amount of current. So to some extent, they're self-limiting. They don't overload, because as they get up to a certain temperature, the resistance increases, and that therefore drops the current and sort of self-regulates in that way. Again, the great thing about this, on a morning, I can sit and watch my neighbours scraping ice off with their credit cards, and I press my phone app and tell the car to warm itself up. It's worth an extra 10 grand on the cost of a car to be able to do that, surely. It is, when you watch the neighbours, definitely. Anyway, so that's the heater. This little bit, the maintenance connector, the green bit here, this is the bit that you can use to, there's a range of words we can use here, isolate the vehicle, de-energize the vehicle, all of that sort of thing. So effectively, there's a little plug that you pull out of there, and you can see there are 4 wires in it, and those 4 wires effectively loop all the way from the back of the car, the battery box, and disconnect a circuit that causes the main contactors to pull out on the battery. But I just ask everybody, if you're not speaking at the moment, just to mute your microphone, because it just gets the rattling noises coming along. Or Hayley, you might be able to help them along with that. Sorry, it just makes it easier when delivering. So that's the service or maintenance connector. But if you haven't been through the process or learnt the process of de-energizing, don't touch this, because there's a set routine you have to follow. Anyway, let's move on to something else now. Inside the car, you can see here, this little bit here is that I've got 26 miles worth of range on the vehicle, just to bottom left on there. 26 miles of range. That's about all it does. 28 sometimes. It's not a lot. It's not meant to be. And what I've done here is I've put an ammeter clamp on the main positive lead from the battery, and I've got everything pretty much switched off at the moment here, just except the ignition on, and you can see there's little or no current being drawn from the main battery on there. However, if I switch on the heater, even to just a standard sort of 20 degrees setting, and then go back and look at the range, you can see it's dropped from 26 to 21 miles already just by turning the heater on. And if I go back and have a look now at the ammeter again, you can see that it's drawing about 4 amps. Now, under normal circumstances, you'd think 4 amps is not very much. But if you can see, you might need to move your little sort of window of people out of the way, but there's a little calculation down there. Wattage is voltage times the current. So if we do 400 volts times 4 amps, that works out to about, you know, I've obviously made the sums easier, 1600 watts or 1.6 kilowatts. Now, if I've got, as I said earlier, a battery in here that's rated at about 7.5 kilowatt hours, that means in simple terms that it would provide about 7 kilowatts for 1 hour, or 1 kilowatt for about 7 hours. And you can see now that if we're taking this amount of power out of the battery, 1.6 kilowatts, that would reduce the battery by about 1/5 of its capacity or thereabouts. So quite a significant impact on what's going on. However, it can get a lot worse. If I just go along now, and what I've done now, apart from showing you how dusty my car is inside, I've turned the heater up maximum. It goes up to about 30 degrees Celsius and then high, and I've put the maximum blowers on and everything else like that. And you can see it's dropped the range down to about 16 miles. If I go back and look at my ammeter now, you will see it's reading about 17 amps, which again, you know, under normal circumstances, 17 amps is not such a lot really, is it? But it is if you multiply it by 400. And that comes out to about 6,800 watts or 6.8 kilowatts. That's nearly the entire capacity of the battery on the car. The one good thing about that, I could sit in the car for an hour and keep warm, couldn't I, before the battery went completely flat. But you can begin to see, I hope, why that has a massive impact on the range of a vehicle. So again, you know, the figures that you get when you look at this, like where it says 16 miles on there, to some extent on a car, those are guesstimates of what's going on based on typical driving, because the you know, machinery, if you like, the logic, the intelligence on board, it doesn't know how far or how fast you're going to be driving the next bit of the journey. So it can only make an estimate of how much the range is affected. But hopefully what I can show you here is that the key thing is that putting the heater on and things like that has a huge impact on the vehicle. Now, the other thing that happens, of course, is that once you put the heating on full, then the temperature of the cabin comes up, then it settles down again because it doesn't need to be on full power all of the time. And this brings me back to watching my neighbour scraping ice off in the morning, of course, is that the process of heating the car up before you set off, it actually runs the heater from the mains connection in the morning, and therefore you can achieve like the cabin up to normal temperature before you start driving, so you can still keep full range, and then you're only paying to keep the temperature topped up, if you know what I mean, rather than building it up from zero. So this idea of preconditioning is something that's quite important, I think. Anyway, there you go. I mean, this has been an absolute crazy sort of whistle-stop tour, really, in the short time that we have available. So I've just taken you back round to the front of the car, and you can see that I've put the charging lead back in because the green light is on, and that's because I now need to finish off by saying, if you'd like to know more, a range of books is available from the website denoted herein, particularly the electric and hybrid book, of course, covers a lot more of what's going on here. So there we are, a quick overview of the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. This particular one, a Golf GTE, about a 7.5 kilowatt hour battery. Hopefully that's helped giving you a little idea of some of the components on the vehicle, and perhaps a bit more of an idea about range and how it's affected by the amount of power you're drawing from the battery and the benefits of preconditioning the car and different things like that. So I'm obviously happy to take questions, as Hayley suggested earlier on, but we'll probably pick those up later when we've done all the...
Oh, sorry, Tom. There are a couple of questions. One came in from Perry that I would really like answered. That he says
if we've got time, that's fine.
he knows it's a PHEV, but he's got a question about regenerative braking charging, which I think is a really good question to ask. And there's been a couple of supporters for EV and hybrid technology and parking heaters in general, especially whilst it's cold at the moment. But I would like to focus on Perry's question about regenerative braking, if we could have a quick overview of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in simple terms, what happens on most of these vehicles now is that, scarily enough, they're almost brake-by-wire type vehicles. I mean, there is a hydraulic connection from the pedal to the usual, calipers and pads and such like. But effectively what happens when you put your foot on the brake, using both the pressure of the brake and the brake light circuit as well, that effectively tells the power control electronics that you're not driving anymore, but that you want to slow down. So it reverses the circuitry inside the inverter unit so that the motor now, which, as I mentioned before, is inside the gearbox, kind of built inside the gearbox, is being driven by the rotation of the wheels. And of course, the wheels are being driven by the forward motion of the car. And the driving of that particular motor actually effectively turns it into a generator, because fundamentally a motor and a generator are the same thing. So the generator now starts creating electricity, which is then rectified and put back into the battery to charge the battery up, which then gives you extra energy to use later on. So the point is that it's a little bit like another example might be that on, perhaps not so on modern engines that can control their idle speed so well, but on an older engine, older vehicle, if you switch the headlights on, you can sometimes hear the engine slow down a little bit. And that's because the alternator has been loaded up, it's being made to work. So the headlights are kind of loading up the alternator, and that slows down the engine a little bit. Well, it's a broadly similar thing happening while we're doing regenerative braking. The load is being put on the generator, so the generator's having to work hard, and that's what slows the vehicle down. So what we're doing is transfer of energy. So to finish off, you'll like this, we're transferring kinetic energy of the movement of the vehicle into electrical energy. That electrical energy, we're converting it to the right sort of electrical energy to charge the battery, where we store it as chemical energy. And then we can use it again by converting it from chemical to electrical to mechanical or kinetic energy back out again. So we put it back in the battery and use it later.
So we're talking KERS, HERS, and all the other energy recovery systems there. And
Yes.
As Tom said, there's some excellent information about that in the second edition of the Electric and Hybrid Vehicle book, available at all good stores and also directly from the website, where you'll also get access to Tom's online training facility as well. We're going to hand over to Andy now, Andy Crook. We're in for a bit of a treat here, and he's going to be giving us a short seminar on, there he is. Andy, you with us?
I'm with you.
He is with us. Thank you so much, Tom.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll look through some of the questions, and if I can answer some of them while we're going along, I will do. So hi, Andy, over to you.
Tom, are you able to make Andy a host? Or
Done it. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you very much.
The host. It's like that moment when they hand over the enterprise, isn't it, to someone else?
It is. You have control.
I have control. I have the ball. Okay. Evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening and giving up your time to listen to us waffle on about stuff. I'm going to take Hayley's idea of planning her CPD and apply it to planning for your business. And I'm going to try, I don't know how to do this, and share my screen. He says, how do you do that?
Okay, Andy.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
If you activate your mouse, and then there we go, you found it. Cool.
For that, it's like, have you got it?
That share has started. Thanks, Andy.
Cool. Is it working now?
We've got the screen displayed here, but we've got the management view, not the slideshow.
Yeah, it's not. Ooh, have we got something now?
There we go. It's you're live.
Hey, look at that. Marvelous. Okay, so I'm going to take Hayley's idea just a little bit further. So Hayley was obviously talking about how you would plan as an individual for your CPD. So I'm going to talk about planning as a business. And what I'm talking about is a direction of travel in your business planning. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we start where you are now, and this little graphic that I've put together, it won't take me long to go through this. You'll be glad to know. That circle there, 2020, is the size of your business this year. So I like this time of year. We're coming to the end of December. I don't like it because it's Christmas. That costs me money. I like it because it's the end of the year. We start to reflect on what we have achieved. Have we met our goals? Have we not met our goals? There's often a frantic bit of activity towards the end of the year as we realize we're just short of what we aim to be able to do, and we put stuff in place to be able to achieve those goals. And that's what I want to talk about today. So if you have a look at that circle, it's a bit like that's the whatever it is that you wanted to achieve in 2020. So it could be a goal such as turnover, it could be a goal such as profit, it could be a number of technicians, it could be anything you want it to be, but that just represents the size of your business at the end of this year. So what happens when you want to improve things? Well, what normally happens, you've got some ideas and you want to put them into some sort of practice. So there are a number of options open to you. Just let someone in a second. The first option is you have no planning. You do not plan. Now, when people start in business, it's quite common that they were good at something, so they decided to do it for a living, and they wanted to do it for themselves, but they had no formal business training. And what happens there is you believe that just because you can do technical work means you can run a technical business, which isn't always true. There's some really good books on this. Probably the best one is called The E-Myth, if you wanted to look it up. So if you do no planning and you do what you always did, it will take you in a direction. And what the arrows that I'm showing you are just illustrative, and they determine the direction it will take your business in and how far it'll go if you just do no planning. But what about if your next big idea to take your business forward, to grow your business, is what I call crisis management. Once again, this doesn't necessarily mean you're planning, but what you're going to do is you're going to do more of what we always did. Now, this is something that people tend to do when they set what I would call an ineffective business goal. So for 2021, you might have thought to yourself, you know what, I'm going to do 5% more of what I did last year. But if you did sales of, say, we'll use a round number, £100,000, and you made a loss on those sales of £5,000, if you did £200,000 worth of sales, you would probably make a loss of £10,000. So doing more of something doesn't always mean it's going to benefit the business. So we can see there in our crisis management, the direction we go in, we go out a bit, up a bit, along a bit, but not as far as we did if we just did what we always did. The next one is what I call firefighting. This is where we're reactive to things that happen in the business, but we're trying to improve what we have been doing. Now that will also take you in a direction, and generally it will take you further forward than just crisis management. Now, the next one, which is my favorite, which is the shiny objects planning, which is when you look at what other people are doing, or something, or an opportunity or an idea comes along, and you think, you know what, I'm going to do something really different next year. Or, and this is something I see in the group a lot, is a lot of people are asking, what do you do? Or what are you doing? And then you decide, you know what, I'm going to do a bit of that. If it works for them, it'll work for me. That isn't necessarily true. Yeah. And shiny objects are a bit like the next object, which is new ideas, where sometimes people think, you know what, I'm not going to do what I do now. I'm going to do something totally different. I'm going to develop a new offer I might decide to do, which was quite prevalent in the early days of the group, was a lot of people were saying, you know, I'm going to do aircon. And they went out, bought a machine, and they were going to develop a new offer, and I'm going to offer aircon to all my customers. And then what I call distractions, which is when we're going to do something slightly different, which isn't the same thing as doing something really different. And you can see that doing something slightly different to what you do now gives you a lot of momentum. You can travel quite a long way with this and appear to be doing really, really well. But they are just examples of what people do to progress their business further forward. But they do it without knowing where they're going. And that's why I use this direction of travel in business planning idea, is you need a compass. You need a direction of travel, and you need to make sure everything you do is taking you towards where you need to get to. Now, if we do nothing and we do no planning and we always do what we always did, we'll always get what we always got. Henry Ford said that, and I quite like that saying. It's because if we always do what we did and we do nothing else, as things move forward, we could end up going backwards. So you can see, doing no planning, although it seemed to take us a long way, it took us a long way backwards. And if you have a look at the size of the circle that represents 5 years ago, the business was smaller in whatever way you want to measure your business. And we've gone, actually, if we do no planning, we may end up regressing instead of progressing. So what can we do about it? Well, what we need to do is have a plan. And the plan, I like to call is what I call the long-term goal, what it's going to look like 10 years from now, what I call the business vision. And this is a macro plan. So it's looking at it, if you like, a helicopter view from quite high up. And what you're going to do is you're going to close your eyes. You're going to try and imagine what your business would look like with unlimited resources. Now, this is the same for what Hayley was speaking about earlier on with the CPD. This is start your planning with where you want to end up. And it's a really powerful thing. And where would you be if you're a technician, you want to plan your CPD? Where do you want to be in 10 years' time? What qualifications do you want to have? What professional recognition do you want to achieve? Because once you know that, you can take the first step towards achieving it. And it's the same with business. And what I say is, this is the best possible version of the business that you can possibly imagine. That's what you're probably trying to imagine with a business vision. But the the thing I always ask people about when they look at their business is, what do you intend to do with the business when you finish with it? Because there are only 3 ends to a business. You can sell it, if you're lucky. You can close it. And it's amazing how many businesses, when the business owner no longer wants to run it, end up closing because they couldn't sell it. Or if you really don't like your children, you can pass it on to the kids. Who wants to run a garage? Yeah. Now, I say that jokingly. They are the only 3 outcomes. So which one of those do you want to do? And if you start with that, and then you work out your business vision, you can work out what you want your business to look like. And that, what that does, if you have a look at our, if you like, roadmap, is it places the vision somewhere on the screen. Now, it's in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's slightly or significantly bigger in 2030 than the circle is in 2020. So if we, am I still there? Because my internet connection just gone unstable for some reason. If we then look at the midterm plan, which is a more detailed plan, it's something that you can, 10 years seems a long way away, and people struggle with the idea of being of planning for 10 years. If we have a 3 to 5 year plan, what we call a midterm plan, what I call the business goals, and this is what you need to do in the next 3 years, in the most important thing to make your business vision a reality. And you can use something called the business hierarchy for guidance. And I'll quickly go through this. This is something by a gentleman called Mike Michalowicz, which is easy for me to say. He's if you type Mike motorbike into the internet, you get this guy. He's written a number of business books that are really, really good because they are simple and clear, and they use his business concepts and they put them in really, really easy to understand terminology and methods, and there's always little goals for you to achieve. So if you're interested in developing business, I can recommend Mike's books in a way that makes business, understanding the complicated issues of business, really, really simple. And basically what Mike's done is he's taken Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the human needs, and where they're broken down into physiological, safety, belongingness, esteem, and self-actualization. And he's converted them into the business needs. And he says the first and the foundation needs for every business is the creation of cash, which is sales. And then once you've got sales, you need to then generate profit. And once you've generated profit, you need to generate order. And then once you get to that point, you have a business that generates sales, which generates profit, which can do it automatically. Your business becomes a cash machine, and you can go to it and make withdrawals. And if you get to that point, you can do it without actually being there. And then once you've got that, they're what they call the get elements of business. You get to the give, and this is where you can start giving back, which is the impact and legacy parts of his hierarchy. But I'll let you read Mike's book, and rather than me tell you what he wants to tell you, and we'll go back. So we've got a hierarchy of guidance. So to make your business vision a reality, you need to set some business goals, and they should be based on sales, profit, and order, and then your psychological needs of impact and fulfillment. If you're lucky enough to have a systemized business which is just making you money, then you can work on your legacy. I dare say there's few of us worrying about our legacy right now, but it is possible. So if we go back to our little map and I think about where we are with our compass now, you can see that our goal in 2025 is in line with the vision of 2030. It's a bit smaller, a little bit more achievable, and a little bit more realistic from where we are right now. So what I want to do quickly before I end is show you how you can decide what to do when you think about, you've got all these great things going on. Obviously, we don't want to do no planning. Yeah, we don't really want to be distracted. So doing something slightly different. Can you see that? Although that's pretty effective, it's taken us along from where we need to be. And a new idea is taking us away from where we need to be. Copying another garage doesn't really take us in the same direction. And doing something really different, being distracted by a shiny object, isn't really taking us in the direction we need to be in. However, doing more of what we always did, but doing it more efficiently, improving what we do. Can you see how they are kind of in the right direction? But where would they take us? What would the vector be if we just did those two things out of all the ideas we had? If we sat down and said, we're going to do more of what we did, but we're going to do it better. Well, that would take us to about there in the next 2 to 3 years. However, what we need to think about is how we get to 2025. And that's where we start to have our 1-year plans or our business objectives. Yeah, and we have an action plan, which is a bit more micro. And these are the 10 to 12 things you're going to do. So it's kind of one a month you're going to do in the next year to achieve that business goal. And I use something called objectives and key results, or they're known as OKRs. And these need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. Yeah. So what you can do then is, once you know this, because you've got objective, the objective is to get to a certain point, and you've got key results. What the key results are, they're metrics, things you can measure that tell you whether or not you're heading in the right direction. If you like, there you looking at the compass and seeing if you're going in the right direction, or have you been distracted by doing something totally different and you're now going south instead of north in terms of your business direction. You could still be effective, you could be doing more of something, but you could be doing more of the wrong something. And if you have a look there, you get a new idea, but now our new offer, let's say our other offer was, as I explained earlier on, was aircon, which wasn't something we did before, and we don't want to be an air conditioning business. Yeah, our new offer is aligned more with our end goal, our vision, and our business objectives, and that takes us straight to the center of 2025. So if we then continue to plan in the way that we did up until now, i.e., we're going to improve what we're doing, and we're going to do more of what we always did, plus this new idea, it's going to get us there in 10 years. Can you see how that hasn't taken us to the center of 2030? It's taken us close, but it hasn't quite got us there. So what we'll have to do is keep looking at our objectives and our key results. And what we'll end up doing is, I'll skip over this a second, is we'll end up doing something like that. Can you see how my idea of straight lines isn't really the way it's going to go? We're going to end up tacking, as they would call in sailing. We're going to go in a direction, and when the wind changes, we're going to change, and we're going to end up in the same place. We're going to be on the same bearing. We're going to get to our final objective, but we're going to change direction time and time again to get there. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about. I don't want to go on for too long. Let me stop my share there. But without knowing where you're going, it's almost impossible to get there. And that's the message really of that little sort of presentation. I'm really, really big on having things that you measure. I don't know what it's me. I love a spreadsheet, and I like to know where I am at all times, and I like to know how far I am away from something. And if you imagine having a big, audacious business vision, what's it going to go like? I'm going to sell it to a group of people who want to buy a business, or I want to have a garage in every town in this county. Whatever your big goal is, yeah. Once you've set it, tell someone it, and they will hold you account to it, and then you can start planning on how you're going to achieve it. And that concludes my little ditty.
Oh, thank you, Andy. That was really interesting. I'm familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I must admit that textbook that you've shown is not one I'm familiar with. So definitely one for the Christmas reading list, I think. We're going to be now handing back to, oh, there we go. We've got no immediate questions for you, Andy, but if there are any questions that start to come up as we think about it a bit more and have it sink in, please pop them in the chat box and we can get back to him. And I'd like to ask Andy to hand the hand control of the enterprise back over to Tom, and he's going to introduce us to Techsafe, which is the IMI's offering for EV and hybrid qualifications. Next time, I'm going to get some hold music, I think. Do, do, do.
I'm the host. Bear with me. I'm coming back.
You should be on now, Tom.
Thank you. I've got it now. Sorry, everybody. I just minimised it to go and find my PowerPoint presentation, and then I lost you all again. So let me share my screen. Am I doing the TechSafe bit, Hayley? Is that the plan?
Yes, please, Tom. You're on for TechSafe.
Okay, I really will only be like 2 minutes on this one. I promise you, or something like that. Anyway, TechSafe. I just thought it would be useful to fill it in my role as, like Hayley, I'm a fellow of the Institute of the Motor Industry, and I've been doing a lot of work with them recently to develop this scheme called TechSafe. I know we've had some, shall we call them, interesting debates in the group over a period of time about the benefits of licensing the trade. And I can assure you that the IMI and other people have been sort of trying and lobbying on this for many, many years, but government in particular are not interested in taking it on. And the only way it would ever work is that if it became mandatory and legislation in some way. So what the IMI have been doing is working on this TechSafe idea. And the idea of TechSafe, first of all, it's a little homage to the words gas safe, isn't it, in working in the same way. So first of all, a little thought about why we need it. I mean, as I was chatting earlier, talking about my own car, which is the best part of 400 volts, we've generally gone from the original Prius, which was, well, 130 something volts, but then around 200, 400 volts. There's a lot of vehicles out there now are 600 volts, and 1,000 or even 1,200 volt systems are coming, and they are out there. So the danger of death and everything else that goes along with it is becoming more exciting by the day. Now, an interesting thing that we found out when doing a lot of research is that working on high voltage vehicles in an ordinary workshop, you are subject to the same electricity at work regulations as if you were working on the high voltage, you know, the mains effectively. And what the high electricity at work regulations say is that if an accident occurs in a workshop because somebody is not trained or not competent to be working on high voltage, then it becomes the responsibility of the workshop owner or the supervisor or whoever's involved. So in other words, there is a legislative requirement to be able to prove that you're trained to work safely on high voltage vehicles. So that's where TechSafe originated from. And the idea of the TechSafe process is that it's not onerous in any way. It just requires, as you'd probably expect, that you would have to achieve an electric vehicle qualification or a certification of some sort at level 2, level 3, or level 4, and you can become TechSafe registered at that particular level. It does involve IMI membership. If you're not a member, then it's worth going along and asking about the various packages and deals and all sorts of things that are available. If you're an MOT tester, for example, you can almost get free membership at the moment and different things like that. So do get in touch. And it also requires you to be on the professional register, which does link back nicely to what Hayley was talking about earlier on about CPD and logging progress and things like that, because the professional register means that you sign up and agree to a code, if you like, that you will complete CPD, you will stay up to date, and so on. The slight difference with the CPD that you have to do with, for example, electric vehicle work, is that the syllabus, if you like, for that CPD has been specified by a group of people in that particular area, sector advisory group. So you have to complete general CPD to stay on the professional register. But to set a context here, you know, we're talking 30 hours a year or something, so this is not a huge amount, but you also have to complete as part of that specific EV or electric vehicle CPD to stay up to date. And the idea is to try to get away from this thing whereby, you know, you imagine that you're up in court, that you've just electrocuted your apprentice or something, and they say, well, you know, were you qualified to be working on that vehicle? So yes, of course I was, Your Honour. I did the electric vehicle course 7 years ago. And of course you would be laughed at, because a qualification on modern technology that's 7 years old is worth next to nothing. But if you were able to say, yes, I qualified 7 years ago, but I've maintained professional status throughout that time, then it's a defense and it's a proof of your own competence. So that's the idea. So you achieve a qualification, get membership, professional registration, complete general and specified CPD, and therefore stay on the register. So here's just a couple of facts and figures that are kind of important about what's going on here. It's been in the news a lot recently, of course, hasn't it, about the 2030 deadline on sales of ICE vehicles, unless they're decent plug-in hybrids. And general predictions, these all vary, of course, and there's an element of, finger in the air here to see what's going on, but somewhere between 2.7 million and 10.6 million EVs on the road by 2030. And the UK at the top end of that figure will therefore need 70,000 or more qualified technicians, qualified in electrical, high voltage electrical work. Now, currently, we've got about 5% of the workforce, which is about 13 to 20,000 technicians are currently qualified. So you can see there's some work to do. But Techsafe is a way, just to summarize, of kind of proving that you are competent, proving that you meet the requirements of electricity at work. And an interesting driver for this particular thing, as well as obviously not breaking the law, is that insurance companies are now going to start specifying, some of them already do, that if you want insurance on electric vehicle work, then you must be Techsafe qualified. Body shop repairs, for example, which is a big thing that insurance companies are interested in, obviously, are now starting to specify that at least one person within that body shop must be Techsafe qualified up to level 3 in order to be able to carry out the necessary work. So it's starting to become, if you like, to use the proper words, the de facto license. And the final thing about Techsafe, I'll just sort of finish that one off. The final thing about Techsafe really is that as well as the electric vehicle, which I've just mentioned, in due course, it will also be available for ADAS, for automated driving, for working on hydrogen, what's the other one I've forgotten at the moment, cybersecurity, and a few other things like that. So all of these sort of things are adding to our license, and it does link back very nicely to the CPD that Hayley was talking about and the business planning that Andy was talking about. This is something to think about and put on the plan, isn't it? So I think that's quite useful. Perry's just dropped a question in, which was a good one. Techsafe license, is it automatically available when you complete level 3? The systems at the IMI are very nearly there to do that. So the answer is near enough yes, as long as you've done the qualification with the IMI, that is. If you've done it with other awarding organisations are available, then you would have to register it yourself in somewhere. But if you're a member, if you're on the professional register and you do a level 3 qualification, then yes, in a very short space of time, it automatically logs on. So there we go. That's a very quick overview of Techsafe. Conscious of the time, I'll hand back to Hayley.
Thank you, Tom. I always enjoy the debate around about Techsafe. I'm very pro Techsafe. I think it's an excellent idea, and I can see in the future it being rolled out for the qualifications that we're expected to have within the industry. I think another runner for that is going to be ADAS and the automated driving systems and things like that that are coming in the future. So I don't think we're going to need it for as much for the sort of level 1 through to 2 of our sector, I don't think, but perhaps we may even be seeing it creeping into level 3 and 4, that we can continuously prove our competency. But yeah, as you said, it's hot debate as to licensing, and is this licensing through a back door?
Well, the answer is yes, Hayley.
Yeah,
it is.
it's a
but
really,
don't tell anybody.
No, it's a really interesting debate. I welcome it, and I think as an employer and as somebody who's working at the coalface, that this is something that should be encouraged within our sector. Communicating it to the motorists, I think, is going to be interesting. The Financial Times recently had a 3-day conference. I don't know if anybody caught it, about the future of the automotive industry. It was fascinating. And my takeaway from that was the seminar from Volvo, who anticipate the UK car park to be reduced to a fifth of what it is at the moment. The stats from Sheeper are incredibly interesting. The UK car park is aging. We're seeing double figures for the first time in my experience, that the average car in the UK is now 10 years old. And that's set to be increased with the reluctance to engage with EV and hybrid technology from some parts of the UK population. There's a real Betamax fear that they're going to end up with an expensive hatchback with the wrong plug. And it has happened in technology in the past, and this is a big financial commitment to back the wrong horse. So there's a lot of wait and see from UK motorists. Whilst they are waiting to see how the technology develops, they will hang on to their older motor cars. There is an interesting debate as to whether the subscription model of vehicle ownership will increase. Will this replace PCP? So there's a lot of debate, and it's an exciting time to be involved with the automotive sector. Or as a Chinese proverb says, it's an interesting time, which is a nice way to say that we're all at war.
Hayley, can I jump in there? I mean,
Yeah.
you and I attended the same conference, which I know where some of those figures have come from. But one of the interesting things that somebody said, I can't remember which person, it doesn't really matter. But, you know, there's talk about electric vehicles and complex vehicles becoming more expensive all the time and things like that.
Citroen Amy. Let's have a look at that. Citroen Amy or AMI.
Yeah, well,
that's a
€6,000
electric vehicle.
Yeah, no, that's true. But the thing I was particularly thinking about is that when somebody suggested that we might start buying our cars in the same way that we buy our smartphones, in that, you know, we buy a phone and, you know, hand a certain amount of money up front and then have to pay another certain amount of money every month for a certain number of years, and then we can hand it back or trade it in and things like that. And because of the massively reduced running costs on electric vehicle over these longer periods of time, that could be something that's interesting. So just imagine buying a car in the same way that you do take a phone contract out. It's just an interesting.
And I love that example there with the mobile phone, because as infotainment systems become more sophisticated, and with the connotations with GDPR and holding personal data within the car itself, you've effectively got a hard drive in that car now that's storing a lot of information. One of the interesting ways to circumvent the increasing cost for the car is to remove that technology entirely. So we may see a trend where electric cars, pure electric vehicles, are actually quite simple contraptions. And if you take the infotainment system out of there and rely instead on the one that we've all got, which can then plug into the car and provide your GPS, provide your music, provide everything, that expensive screen that is sat in the middle of the dash already, you can simplify that method of transport very quickly and make it very accessible. And this is how the Citroen Amy, or AMI, because I think AMI is French for friend, isn't it? So the Citroen AMI has reduced its costs by taking infotainment out and just putting a docking port in. And the technology that everybody is carrying around in their pocket will then integrate into the vehicle and make a much cheaper final mile solution. The average journey that a motorist does in the UK per day is less than 10 miles. So will we have an expectation of a small, easy vehicle that is cheap to maintain, cheap to purchase, and accessible? And then would we then turn to a subscription model car or a rental for those longer journeys? So are we going to see, particularly with the pandemic, we're going to see, are people going to want those soft, luxurious interiors, or are we going to be going to cheaper interiors that you can wipe down? If you're going to have a subscription model car, I don't think you're going to have those sumptuous interiors. So although cars with electric and hybrid technology on the face of it look like they're going to be very expensive, we may see some consumer demand bringing those costs down because of our newfound reluctance for anything to hold a load of germs. Oh, Volvo already offer a subscription version, which you can change at a month's notice. And they've used the old, yes, well, it was the original concept for the 2CV. Rob Drinkwater is completely right. There have been over history a number of offerings. I think the most famous is going to be the Volkswagen Beetle, the people's car. And this was going to mobilize an entire country and allow them to access training and better jobs and improve their living. So it's not a new idea for cheap personal transport. And I think we have yet to see that take hold within the UK so far. The early adopters for EV technology, they spent a lot of money. We have had some cheaper versions like the Renault Twizy and things like that. But it's not really a family car. It's not really very good in the rain, which we have a lot of in the UK. The Citroen Ami, because it's not really a car, it's a quadricycle. It doesn't really sit within our existing UK legislation. So, you know, it's great if you're French and you've, I've heard of pubs buying them in France when you've lost your license because you've been drinking too much. And so the pub will have a sort of Citroen Ami so you can get home and back to the pub, I think is probably their assumption there as to why you're going to be using that service. So yeah, especially in Wales. Is that the rain for in Wales, Rob? Yeah, got a nod there. I mean, I love the Twizy. It's a lot of fun to drive. And again, like the Citroen Ami, they charge very quickly within 3 to 5 hours just off a 3-pin household plug. That's impressive. You know, you can put that in the hands of your teenager. Citroen Ami retailing out at €6,000 is so impressive. They've achieved that by not having many different panels on it. That's one of the ways that they've achieved that. So the panel on the front is identical to the panel at the rear. The door on the left is identical to the door on the right. So you have one suicide door and one normal opening door. You've got a simple plastic interior. You've got a docking station for your smartphone. I don't think it even has door handles on the inside. It's got little fabric straps. And I think it's a fascinating insight as to where Citroen feel that personal transport is going to go that has not really been replicated throughout the other marques so far. So what makes, we've got some questions coming in. Twizy in a wetsuit. Yeah, Perry, that could work. There's no such thing as in bad weather, any inappropriate clothing. And somebody has converted a 3-wheel van to full electric, and all they used was a 3-volt battery. Thank you, Tony. I'm going to have to ask you about your sources for that because I'm really interested to see. I have a 6-volt motorcycle and I can only fire its one spark plug or use its headlamp. I can't use both at the same time. So I'm really interested to see how that 3-volt battery is going to be working. I'm aware it's coming up to 7:10 now and I'm taking up everybody's time. So what I'd like to do is if everybody would like to change their view from speaker view to gallery view. It's in the top right hand corner. There's a little thumbnail and switch their cameras on and we can all have a wave and say hello to everybody. I think when our headline act was on, Tom, we were up to 27 participants and we've got 23 of us down to the depth. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to put some faces. Oh, yeah, please switch off your microphones. Now's the time to say hello.
Thanks, everybody. It's been good fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Let's do it
Cheers,
again.
Tom.
Yeah, cheers, everyone. It's been good.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Andy.
Thank you very much.
And if you'd like to see future events like this with the Automotive Support Group, we've had a blast doing it. We've had a lot of fun having chats on the run up to it, getting the content together. And it's been a nice excuse to have a few beers and things like that. I'm very happy to run another Piston Broke pub, virtual pub. Cheers, Rob. Oh, no, there's no alcohol in that. Yeah, no, we've got one from Adam there. I do like that ginger beer. Of course, yes, I remember you saying. But yeah, if we wanted to just do a social in the future. Yeah.
Have I missed the party?
You missed the party? Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, our Piston Broke pub. We'll do another one for Christmas, I think. And it's been really nice getting to know you guys and hearing about your businesses.
Hopefully there'll be more than just the two of us, Hayley.
Sorry? Oh yeah, Perry and I did a Piston Broke pub, and it was just me and Perry drinking on our own.
It was like speed dating, but no one else there.
No, it was just me. I think we were in that virtual pub for about 2 hours, weren't we, Perry?
Well, I think you, me, Hayley,
sounds
you and
right.
David and me managed about 3 hours, didn't we, one night?
It's really bad.
Yeah,
Turning into a raging alcoholic.
yeah, it does to you.
That's been great. Thanks, everybody.
That's been great.
Right,
Thank you
thanks,
so
Tom.
much. And if you
Thanks,
think of
everyone.
any further questions, please feel free to send them in, because we've really enjoyed interacting with you guys, and it's definitely given us plenty to do over lockdowns and things like that. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye all.
Okay.
Thanks, Hayley.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you.